Coming to you from the city of the weird. Exploring topics from the esoteric and unexplored to dimensions unknown. Shining a light of truth on the darkest corners of our reality. Welcome to the Curious Realm.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Curious Realm's official coverage of the International Remote Viewing Association's 25th anniversary conference cruise here on the fabulous Mariner of the Seas. We have the pleasure of being joined by Cindy Miller. She is the treasurer of IRVA, a remote viewer, and she gave a fantastic presentation yesterday on the use of AI in remote viewing. Before we get into that, Cindy, what brought you to the world of remote viewing to begin with?
Sure. It was initially during COVID, I'm sure you hear that from a lot of people, and watched some of Paul's videos. That was like, wow, that's really fascinating. Joined his Facebook page, and then took classes from Pam Coronado. Someone posted about that.
Wow.
So a lot of her psychic detective courses and then CRV courses, and interacted with several of the instructors. And at some IRVA conferences, talked more with some of your, Tom McNair and Paul Smith, and
Sure.
met all the community.
Yeah.
And then Pam and Paul introduced me to IRVA. And when Pam was the president of IRVA, and when she went off the board, they suggested that to Deborah that I join, IRVA, and that's how I got really involved with IRVA.
Fantastic. And I take classes with Lynn Buchanan, and the one thing that I love that he says is that you don't have to be psychic to be a remote viewer, but it helps. It is really interesting because you don't have to be a clairvoyant. You don't have to be a medium or anything like that. It's
Correct.
literally a discipline that you can learn to train your mind to take the stray information that's coming in and focus it. Were you ever, I guess, leaning personally toward having psychic experience, being clairvoyant, anything like
Sure.
that?
I wish I had a interesting story to tell, like so many of your guests, but just exposed to it when I was growing up. Of course, had a father who was into ancient aliens and everything like that. So we got lots of exposure to that.
You didn't have clairvoyant experiences. You weren't a medium of any type, anything like that.
No, I wasn't
before you came
practicing
to the world of remote viewing.
anything. No, I wasn't doing anything like that.
Have you personally noticed anything like that uptick in your life since beginning remote viewing?
Sure. You're more sensitive to it.
Yeah.
It's more of a thing. I would always class such things under intuition.
Yes.
Which is not an unusual thing.
That is it.
Precognitive things would happen. And, the chances of that happening, and of course, there are, that could actually happen. So I've had things like that happen in my life, which most people have.
Yeah. And the question is whether or not you are tuned in to that moment at that moment, and whether or not you even know how to tune the radio, or realize that the radio is being tuned at that moment. So, but
I've taken some of those courses too, like mediumship. And that was pretty successul in an experience. I was like, don't know what to think about that. And then started delving more into shamanism, because that's so ancient. It's been around forever. And got a little involved with the Foundation for Shamanic Studies, which also it was stood up to help bring shamanism back to indigenous communities, because it had been either wiped out or removed because of the politics of whatever region it is, right? It's not, having a powerful shaman over the people is not necessarily conducive with other agendas that may be present in the area. So all of these different to me, there are a lot of different modalities of the same sort of thing.
Well, and it's very much the same way remote viewing is, where there's controlled remote viewing, emotive remote viewing, associative remote viewing. They all kind of hinge on the same concept, but some of them, like I've been saying all weekend, I've just started my journey. The sessions that we did yesterday without Bounder. We're probably maybe about session 8 or 9 in my
Right,
remote
really?
viewing journey.
Okay.
Not even joking. And I've known about it for years.
Yes.
I've researched it. I've done all kinds. I've known about Lynn Buchanan for 20-something years. You know, and now the fact that I'm taking classes with him is really cool.
Yeah, I'm excited he's on the board again.
Oh,
too.
that's fantastic. I'm so glad to hear that, because,
Yes.
you know, people like that really do bring, I think, a different grounding. And the one thing that I've said all weekend that I love about controlled remote viewing is number one, the concept of the monitor. And the idea of there's somebody there checking you, there's somebody there going, okay, get out of the rabbit hole. Let's hop back over here onto the path.
Mm-hmm.
You were talking about this. Let's go back to it.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that's something that's highly necessary. And I understand that in associative remote viewing, not necessarily the case. You know, you're much more free form, much more going with just true intuition, and whatever comes out and whatever rabbit hole you go down, you go down. You know.
Yes, and you know, Deborah and John Knowles, you know, have a very big book on that. I'm not an expert at ARV, just scribbled myself on a few things like that. But yeah, I alternate between free form and doing the more formal CRV method. It just depends on what the task is.
Well, and this is where we get into your presentation about AI and incorporating AI. And there were a couple people, one specifically, that commented at the end. It was much more of a comment than a question.
Right. Yeah.
But the statement was, I don't think AI will be able to do remote viewing. I firmly agree. I don't think AI is going to be a remote viewer. And I think that she had a misunderstanding of what your presentation was. The presentation was, how can you use AI to prompt your remote viewing session? How can you use AI as a monitor? How can you use AI to generate targets for you? Correct. Things like that. Correct. So what brought you to literally this new modality? I consider it straight up a new modality, because it's different than CRV. And it's different than the others. So, you know,
I wouldn't
AIRV.
Yeah. AIRV.
That just happened right here.
Well, so I don't think the nature of RV is going to change. You know, I agree with the question, with your, you know, what you had said, and also what the participant had said. You know, that the chances that AI would be able to do remote viewing extremely slim. But we don't understand. We can't rule it out, because we do not understand the mechanism. Yeah,
we can't rule out sentience within a computer chip either. It's not that hard to program eventually.
Right. And we don't know what artificial general intelligence is going to be.
That's
Nobody does. I mean, I know OpenAI has a 4 or 5 step process to get to artificial general AI, but even the experts, you know, do not agree or even understand what that actually means. So this isn't a modality. I think AI is extremely powerful in probing what is that mechanism. You know, by making it clear, giving us opportunities to do research, for users to enhance their remote viewing sessions, either with visualization or gaining more information if they upload their session, and querying the session, or input the target as well as the session, and having the AI do the comparison. What did you miss in the comparison? What is it saying? It will be it'll be wrong things.
Sure.
But there also may be insights. But to me, researchers, it's going to be a very powerful tool to analyze the data.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just it. And especially when you're looking at specifically people like Lynn Buchanan, who have everything in a database. Like, that's what AI is looking for. Like, you want to train an AI, that's what you need, is properly coded database with data in it and proper data sets, everything else that it can cull and pull data from and see similarities.
So you can use that unstructured data, of course, with AI, and that's the beauty of it.
I mean, you can throw in 8 papers and have it coalesce them into one. And it's great. You got to go through and edit it. But once again, especially as an an associative remote viewer or a motive remote viewer that may not be using a monitor per se,
Right.
to have that as a second pair of eyes. Because like I said in my presentation yesterday, you've got to have a ride or die. You've got to, research does not occur in a vacuum. And at some point, you've got to pass your session on to somebody and go, can you please check my data?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you please check my session?
Right.
And to have AI be able to look at that in a different way and see patterns that maybe we as people don't.
Yeah, right. And so the opportunity to use it, you know, and that's the project that I, you know, part of what I'm working on, to use it for individuals to improve themselves without having to, you know, the fear of having someone else look at your, you know, session, to build up confidence. But also the ability, AI can actually, if you design systems and portals well, I think some points that you made in your talk, you know, we make creating more of a broad audience and reducing the stigma. You didn't say it quite this way, right?
But that's what it is, though.
But we need to find a way to make this a lot more open and acceptable and usable
and accessible.
Accessible is a key word. You said, you know, you talked about how people learn, you know, very differently. And and
generationally we learn differently. I learned completely differently than my mother.
Right.
You know, and looking at my son who's 7, like I'm very lucky to come from a family of teachers and went to college for education for a little while, things like that. So it's like, it's great to see that and be able to kind of see what he's into and guide him in that way. And be like, go enjoy it, go learn it, go do it.
Exactly.
You know? And it's fantastic to see that be able to be adapted and see him rapidly adapt to a computer, to see him rapidly adapt to building something in a Minecraft world, things like that.
Right.
Like it's fantastic. And I won't discourage it because it does activate the brain in a different way.
Correct.
It sources a different level of problem solving.
Yes.
So
exactly. And though of course there's the darker side, we need to worry about the privacy. Again, and people need to be cognizant. That's why talking about this, even, you know, presenting on it, bring those issues to bear so that people are confident in interacting with AI like we did in the in the previous class I taught for IRVA, but we did a little bit of it there, but also cognizant of protecting their privacy.
Absolutely. And that's just it. Like even pictures of my son, I've never associated his name with his face on social media.
I imagine.
Like, ever.
Right.
Because I'm basically giving away his biometric data every time I post a picture of him.
Yeah.
Without his consent. He has zero consent there.
Right.
You know, so the least I can do is not tie his name to it.
Right. And with all this outsourcing that's going on, you know, especially with the big corporations.
Yeah.
I love that now they're listing out who processes the data.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and even now as a YouTube creator and things like that, there is 2 new check marks in YouTube. One of them down whenever you say more, one of them says, I have not edited this or changed this footage in any way.
Oh, okay.
This footage is not AI generated.
Yes. Interesting.
So those are 2 new check marks that just in the last 3 months have popped up on YouTube Creator whenever you're uploading a video.
Oh, wow.
You now have to state that, like, I did not edit this to all get out to make it say what I wanted it to say.
Right.
And I did not create this or generate this with an AI program to try to deceive people.
Right.
So,
but some of your content is AI generated. You definitely love the images. You and I talked and sat there and did Mid-Journey images.
I had Mid-Journey images in my presentation.
So do you check that box and say yes?
I can't say that I use Mid-Journey or anything in my show.
Okay, gotcha.
So in my videos that I generate, things like that, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not generating footage with, you know, Flickr or anything like that. So it's all things like this.
Right.
So,
and what did you think of
it's a responsibility thing, and you do have to be careful for that.
Yes.
It's even the fact, like I was saying at dinner the other night, I don't even record my show via Zoom.
Right.
Because, Zoom's recording it to train their AI. And there's a lot of my guests that if they found out that their stuff was being given to an AI, like they would not be down with that.
Right.
They wouldn't be cool with it.
Yeah.
And I understand that. Like,
Yes.
I fully get it. So I'm not going to do that. And I
Mhm.
try to tell everybody that's like, yeah, I talked to my therapist on Zoom. It's like, you may want to check your
Yeah.
end user licensing agreement
I-
because your therapy session is being recorded without your permission. Well, like technically with your permission, but without your knowledge because nobody hit record.
That's right. That's right. So you have to take all those precautions, which it was funny. I was looking, about using, we did this,
Yeah.
Deborah and I did this video on her being monitored with AI. And, I was researching on, whether or not people have been using AI monitored therapy and what are they doing in there. But it's really containerizing and encrypting all of that data and make it compliant. And that's expensive. That's expensive to do. But Microsoft actually, I think, has a patent out for that. I was looking at their design. So definitely patents are starting to come out in this area where people want to use this for therapy.
And it was really, really fascinating to say, they're using AI for therapy all kinds of ways. It's fascinating to see. Like you're hard pressed to, in any chat screen, be talking to anything but an AI. That's been fed their years of actual, this telephone conversation is being recorded for customer service quality. All those transcripts have been fed into all those IT transcripts of like, hey, how do I fix my Windows? That was all fed into stuff. And you are now talking to an AI chatbot till it hits like 8 different marks. And then it's like, let me get you a person.
Right. Exactly.
But like, I'm very good friends with the owner of Blueberry Podcasting, and he's like, we've developed it and it's great. It's fantastic. He's like, people get in and out the help doors so fast and they've got their answer and it's great.
Yeah.
And it really helps streamline workflows in that kind of way. So yeah. And I think people are worried that there's going to be a Skynet, things like that. But I think we're a long, long way away from that, and we can put those barriers in place. But when you're talking about monitoring, and using it for monitoring, I was really fascinated with that video because Deborah was very much training the AI as a monitor as she went. It would say something and kind of go down a rabbit hole the way that AI does, and she'd be like, "Please don't do that. It's very distracting to me during my session." "Oh, I'm sorry. I'll stop that."
Yes, exactly. Yeah, even to get it to start, it was working fine for me. It wasn't on the video. And then she said, "I'd like you to AI monitor." I cannot do that. I can, maybe guide you and stuff. So I had to give it some prompting ahead of time.
Yeah.
And then
what a monitor does.
Yes. And then she did a great job, like you saw, of correcting it.
Yeah.
So the potential's there, but how do you make it go, slower, not make those sorts of mistakes, allow you to get into a meditative state,
understand feeling, taste, smell.
Right.
Like I smell metal.
Right. Exactly. Like we talked about.
Or I taste metal. Like humans don't eat metal.
That's exactly right. Definitely get those responses, and you have to train it and prompt it in such a way that it will do that, what you want it to do, and it's possible, but it takes persistence. So if you wanted to have a capability that people can easily use for it and not have to go through all the prompting, that takes programming, right? And it takes, secure encrypted databases, that aren't being used to train the AI.
Well, and it also takes focused AI. I think what people forget is that most things, ChatGPT, things like that, they are pulling data from Google and everywhere. Like I personally use one called SciSummary. I loved it so much I paid the money for a lifetime membership because it only works off the data that you give it. So even if a guest gives me a 500-page PDF of their book, I can put it in there and be like, give me a 500-word summary with 10 bullet points. And I'll still read the first 150 pages like anytime.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I hope that's not an announcement about the hurricane.
We are currently chasing the tail of a hurricane right now in the Gulf of Mexico, folks. So, but yeah, it's fascinating to me to see these things, to see what is, like I said in my presentation, the first dimensional science coming to meet AI, and the fact that we're now leveraging that as a tool.
Yeah, I think it will change the character, not the nature of AI. But what researchers do with it is going to be fascinating. I mean, like the targets. I thought people did better when we put up an AI target, right? You remember we did a real target,
Yeah.
and then I had that other target which was completely AI generated, and it was fascinating how many people got the AI targets.
I got quite a few hits on the AI target.
Right.
And
so what does that say about the nature?
Was that the first thing that came to me was red, and I didn't write it down. I kept going with the more visceral things that happened, and on the sides of that image were red pillars, and it was like, ah.
But what does that
Like
say about, you hear all this literature, people talking, oh, it's important that the target be this way, or that way, have this sort of feel. And yet this is a completely artificially generated target that doesn't exist in the physical world. Yeah. And yet you were able to sense quite a bit about it. And so was a lot of the audience were able to sense a lot about that target. So what does that say about
the plus side of that, especially when you're talking research-wise, things like that, you can now generate targets that nobody's ever seen. Nobody's ever seen that target. Never existed.
Exactly.
It's not a place that maybe they've seen on a map or something like that maybe they get an inkling of, or an overlay, as it's called, where you're overlaying past experience on the current session, that kind of stuff. It's not going to happen in that kind of way with an AI generated image.
Right. So, people may say it was, knowing that image is in my mind, right? Yeah. And so maybe there's a mind connection. There's all sorts of, but we need researchers to really investigate this.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping IRVA can help facilitate, research in that area, as well as more classes on that. So
it is fascinating, the idea of researching not only the impacts but the utilizations of AI when it comes to remote viewing.
Yes.
It can be a very personal process, and it can be a very intimidating process, especially working with the monitor. It takes a certain amount of trust on behalf of the viewer, to kind of not only let go in that kind of way, but to in real time receive feedback, and not necessarily criticism, but like, okay, enough with that. It's not a criticism. It's just like all right, stop.
Yeah, it probably will never get to the point where it can replace like what the Monroe Institute does, where they sit there and put people in a ERV kind of state.
But it can accentuate what they're doing, and provide them a different set of circumstance with which to create target and things like that once again aren't propagated in the real world.
Right.
Aren't in a pre-existing database somewhere else. Like Lynn Buchanan's database, which is drawn on all the time for trainings.
Sure.
Things like that.
And if they collect the data, and it's like, you made such a huge pitch for data, and I think you're absolutely right to be able to understand this pattern and really get to what is this mechanism behind RV. There's a lot of potential to go further than we have been. Like I mentioned, looking at AI and RV, that goes. It's not new, right? That 1986 article is just from the Stanford Research Institute is just one example. So Jacques Vallée has been talking about it for decades, right? Yeah. And so be interesting to see what he thinks about this, since he's been studying this angle.
And the remote viewing circles and the UFO UAP circles are right against each other. It's very interesting. Even the paranormal circles, like last year we had was it Joshua Lewis who came and spoke from Hope Paranormal, and talking about the idea of using remote viewing before sessions that he goes to at houses for cleansings and things like that. So
it is fun to go around to haunted houses. I gotta admit,
it's fascinating. It's fascinating. And even then though, it's one of those we've got to be able to put the data together and quantify that data and have that data ready to shake hands with science, you know. And fortunately, this was once again one of the only parapsychological discipline or study out there that began in a lab. Like it didn't begin in the wild. It did like Madame Blavatsky, things like that.
Right,
great.
right.
The clairvoyant, sure, but remote viewing as we know it began in a lab. Like it was born of laboratory work. So that to me has always been fascinating.
Sure.
And I think a very key linchpin into how we can continue to poke and prod the scientific community to explore this more. Because the question is, are you eliminating this as a possibility of your unknown quantitative? You know, of something that, much like the very beginning of remote viewing, was, are people messing with their experiments when they go home and think about their experiments?
Exactly.
Are they actively, you know, messing up their data because they're thinking about their data when they go home?
Right.
You know, and accidentally influencing their experiments. So.
Exactly. There's so many questions to be answered like that. Yeah. And fascinating people. I really appreciate you know, being involved in all of these conferences and other things and putting this together. I think that's so important for the community writ large.
Well, it's the fact of we've got to be able to let people. A lot of my show, as I tell people regularly, is demystifying topics, taking topics that are very nebulous, very thick, and a lot of people have a great misunderstanding of, and talking to researchers in the field about it and demystifying those misunderstandings. Because once we have a clearer understanding, we all can communicate better. You know?
Exactly.
So
and I think you do an important job in bridging that. I tend to,
you
know, be pretty analytical, you know, because of my science background and all that.
Sure.
So it's nice that you bridge those communities the way you do. I appreciate that. That's why, you know, coming on, it's like, I'm really in this realm, you know. So, and some of your guests are so fascinating with the stories that they have from their, you know, when they were growing up and all these things. And I'm like,
greatly appreciate that, Cindy.
Thank you for bridging that.
We've got about 3 minutes left. Let everybody know where they can go to find out more about remote viewing, where they can go to get involved with IRVA. I know IRVA has a new program that's out there for remote viewers. So tell them a little bit about that before we let you go.
Are you going to interview Patty Gallagher at all?
I'm not sure yet.
Okay. Because she probably has more details. I'm just the treasurer.
That's okay.
So, but International Remote Viewing Association, of course, they have a website, and that's a great way to get involved with them. They have, and Deborah will talk more about this if you talk with her, right? The educational things. There's a new professional membership that they have stood up. Patty did a lot of the thinking behind that. And so she'll be able to talk more to that. But the whole intention is to help, especially budding remote viewers who really want to get out there, be helpful, start a business, or work on some of these requests for information that we get. You know, there's not it's usually the same people you're going to when there's a request for information. And so this is a way to expand that community and help professionalize the field, if that makes sense. Make it a little bit, as you had mentioned, accessibility.
That's it. And the fact of, once again, research doesn't happen in a vacuum. You've got to have research partners. You've got to have people to cross-check data, cross-check sessions, things like that. So the closer localized communities you can build like that, where remote viewers can get together with other localized remote viewers, is fantastic and really grows that data set.
Yeah, and IRVA, and especially Patty's done a great job on that Facebook page. I mean, it is so significantly grown. And I think a lot of remote viewers has done a great job with Facebook. I'm not a big Facebook fan, but I go on there just to see what's going on.
Absolutely. Well, Cindy, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you so much for a great presentation here at the conference. It was fantastic to listen to, and it's been great talking with you.
Great talking with you. Thank you for all you do.
You bet. Well, while you are online checking out more from the International Remote Viewing Association at IRVA.org, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is where you can like, follow, subscribe. That's where you can find all the episodes. That's where you can find all of our videos from live events on our events page, as well as all of the videos from our guests on our videos page. So stay tuned through this quick commercial break. We'll be right back with our continuing coverage of the International Remote Viewing Association's 25th Anniversary Conference Cruise right after this, folks.
The key to good science is good research. At the heart of good research is a good data set. With the field observation and encounter log from Curious Research, you can easily keep track of your investigative information all in one place, making it easier to review cases and readily see comparisons and contrasts between them. Whether out in the woods squatching, in a back room gathering EVPs, or using high-tech gear to track UFO, UAP activity, this easy-to-carry, pocket-sized scientific data log is the perfect companion for any field researcher. You can find your copy of the Curious Research Field Observation and Encounter Log at Amazon.com or visit the official Curious Realm store at CuriousRealm.com/store to reserve your copy for yourself, your family, or a mind that you want to open. That website again is CuriousRealm.com/store.